That's more investing in yourself rather than investing in a bunch of companies that you don't know much about, that you haven't even heard of, you've never been to their boardroom, being in the name of diversification and waiting for 30 years, by the way. 30 years, who's excited to finally live and enjoy life 30 years from now? Right? Can we just question the whole notion of retirement for just a minute? And maybe just retire the concept of retirement and enjoy life along the way, not waiting for one day, someday, then, oh, am I finally going to travel when I have to go get a new hip? Yeah, I wrote this book called Killing Sacred Cows. Anyone heard of it? Yeah, and one time someone introduced me and said that I wrote the book Killing Scared Crows, which just sounds like the meanest thing to do. Like, was it a scarecrow or scared crows? I wasn't sure, but yeah. That book was really about the 9 main financial myths that hold people back. And even though we're gonna be talking about money and finance and cash flow, here's the good news. This isn't gonna be at all about scrimping, saving, or budgeting. It's not a message about sacrifice. See, in a religious context, sacrifice means to make sacred. That's a great thing. But almost any other area of life, when we hear the term sacrifice, it means giving something up. And a lot of times, great things that we give up, including quality of life, in the name of a better life one day, someday. The problem is, when does one day, someday actually get here? See, in 2006, I remember it was January, and we're sitting there accounting for everything that was going on in our life, and I had started in the financial business in 1998, and we're just like counting our blessings, feeling so good about everything. All the hard work was starting to pay off, and then everything changed June 9th. June 9th, I got a phone call on my home line. I don't even know my home line. My wife still says we have to have a home line because maybe every other cell phone melts down and our kids are gonna need us at that one specific moment, right? I don't even know if they know how to use that home phone, or know what the number would be. But at the same time, I'm getting these calls in the morning, and I'm just not answering because I'm just confused as to what the noise even is. Like, what is that? So I finally pick it up, and it's one of my business partners. His name's Mike, and he says, hey, the company plane left St. George, Utah last night with our other partners, Ray and Les, on it, and no one's heard from them. Now, I'm an optimist, so I was thinking, well, maybe they just went to Vegas. That's not far from St. George. Maybe they just took a detour. But once I turned on the news, it had been confirmed that the plane had crashed into Utah Lake. And see, these guys were 35 years old at the time, right? So for the next 4 months, all I did was work. And I worked as hard as I possibly could. And I came from a coal mining family, so I knew how to work hard. But at the same time, a lot of my life was starting to slip away. I gained 22 pounds during that time. I had a 1-year-old son that was born in 2005. I rarely saw him because he was usually asleep by the time I left. And by the time I got back, he was already back to sleep. And I remember being so exhausted trying to keep everything together and make it happen and do whatever it took to honor their legacy at the sacrifice of my own. See, one of my partners, Les, a month before he died, he pulled me aside after this retreat and he said, you know what? I can't imagine life being any better. I love my life. I love my life. And so at this point, I wasn't really loving my life anymore. I'm just exhausted, and then we're going for Thanksgiving to this little town of Price, Utah, which is a 2-hour southeast drive from Salt Lake City where I live, and we're gonna go visit my family, and it's like the first break I've had. And on that drive, we're going through the canyon, which my wife and I have our best conversations in the beautiful mountains, driving in the car, and it starts out pretty awesome. She's telling me I was an extraordinary businessman. I liked hearing it, not gonna lie, She told me I was an extraordinary radio show host, and she used the word extraordinary several times until she looked back at my son in the back seat of our Bentley, which shows and demonstrates all the wealth, but not really how we were really feeling at the time, and looks back at me and says, but you're just an ordinary husband and father. And I got pretty emotional instead of getting defensive because she was right. See, and that kind of thought of sacrifice is what is ingrained in a lot of us when we are taught that hard work will get us there. The problem is with hard work and a bad philosophy, it still equals bankruptcy, frustration, starting over. It means a lot of times in the entrepreneurial world, getting on a treadmill and just running faster, but not getting further ahead. So instead of talking about sacrifice and scrimping and budgeting, we're going to look at a different way to do this, of injecting cash into your life right now. That sound all right? Things that you could put on the ground in the next, let's say 48 hours, because you probably have to get home, that will actually boost your bottom line without having to give anything up. As a matter of fact, why don't we make a deal? Part of what we bring to you and give you this insight, you take some of it and you actually put it into your life to improve it, because you're your greatest asset. Not a stock, not a bond, not a piece of real estate, but you. So as we get this money, let's have you invest it back into yourself, not just into your business, although you can take and put a lot of it back into your business, but into experiences and memories. Because I remember when I first started in business, I was with my dad and we're driving. He had one of those 1984 Chrysler New Yorkers. Anyone remember that car? Anyone even, for those that were born back in those days, it was one that was so technologically advanced that when you open the door, it would tell you the door is ajar. Now, I was a kid, I didn't know what the hell that meant. I'm like, no, it's a door, not a jar, but whatever. It's super cool that there's a robot voice coming from the car. And we're driving down Main Street, and I'm telling him at the time, because I'm just starting, I'm like, I'm going to work harder than anyone else is willing to work so I could live a life in the future that no one else can live. And I thought that sounded so amazing and impressive. My dad said to me, he says, guess what? You can never get back the memories that you never have. It's like, okay. So yeah, we're going to be talking about money and finance here, but I want to set up the stage that there's really three mindsets around this. The first mindset is playing not to lose. And I got really good at playing not to lose growing up in a small coal mining town, because I was on the basketball team where we were ahead at halftime 18 times that year, yet at the end of the season, we won 3 games. That's a professional level of playing not to lose, right? And playing not to lose in the world of finance looks like scarcity. It looks like fear, doubt, and worry. It looks like budgeting and constraint and reduction and elimination, and no one shrinks their way to wealth. I don't know why I'm yelling. I didn't mean to yell. I'm just really excited right now. So no one's done anything wrong that I know of. I'm just passionate, right? So playing not to lose also looks like a term you've probably heard over and over in the financial world: diversification. Diversification for most businesses is diversification. It's actually premature diversification. If you take good money out of your business and put it into plans that are locked away, that you don't know, that you don't understand, that you don't have an exit strategy for, you don't know why it would go up or down, you're just told, invest early, often, and always. This is born of a playing not to lose mindset, because you're no longer investing in yourself. And fitting that we're here in Orlando, because one of the best statements I ever heard on this was written by Roy Disney, Walt's brother. He actually wrote a letter to his parents where he said, you know what? I think a lot of people are going to learn some hard lessons in the stock market. And this was just before the Great Depression. He said, what we're going to do is just invest in what we know and put it in this little TV studio that we're launching, or this little studio that we're launching. And look what happened. That's more investing in yourself rather than investing in a bunch of companies that you don't know much about, that you haven't even heard of, you've never been to their boardroom, being in the name of diversification and waiting for 30 years, by the way. 30 years, who's excited to finally live and enjoy life 30 years from now? Right? Can we just question the whole notion of retirement for just a minute? And maybe just retire the concept of retirement and enjoy life along the way, not waiting for one day, someday, then, oh, why am I finally going to travel when I have to go get a new hip? Not as cool, not as fun. Or if the whole way there you're in the playing not to lose, scarcity and scrimping mentality, do you finally get there one day and you flip the switch and go, I'm no longer a miserable miser, I'm now an abundant spender? Like, that doesn't happen. So it becomes an epidemic, a disease of the mind, where people adopt the consumer condition. The consumer condition is a place where people take more value from the world than they give to it. And it is a disease of the mind that destroys wealth. Nothing will destroy wealth more than scarcity. Scarcity, I don't care how much luck, saving, discipline, rate of return, business scale ideas, or anything. If you're in scarcity, you will find a way to make a good thing bad. And you agree, he just gave me an absolutely like amen from the front. I wish I had something to give you. Like, thanks. I love it. You know, just so you know, I'm not Jesus. So there's this different mindset. And by the way, this other mindset's a lot sneakier because I don't feel like people that are in the playing not to lose show up to these types of things. The sneakier mindset is the playing to win mindset. The playing to win is something that we put on the cover of magazines. The playing to win is the very thing that had Ryan get so sick at 30 years old because he was just working so hard. It's the same thing that I had when I was like, okay, my partners are they're dead. What am I going to do to keep this all alive? I'm going to do my radio show every single day. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And whatever it takes is the mantra, but this is the question. At what cost? At what cost? Playing to win is where risk is rewarded. It's where volatility lives. It's where cash crunches are continually invited in on a regular basis. It's where people lose their health, lose their family, lose their life because of playing to win, because sometimes we have the wrong definition of success that comes from society rather than from ourselves. So, 2 questions. Number 1, are you playing a game worth winning? And number 2, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like if I showed up and said, you can work harder and make more money, who's really excited about that advice or who wants to punch me in the throat? You know? I mean, do you think someone becomes a billionaire just because they put in more time than you or they work harder? It's about doing the right hard work. Yeah, hard work's part of the equation, but the wrong hard work actually leads to exhaustion. It leads to difficulty. It leads to, feeling guilty when you're doing one thing because you're not having any time for another. And there's something in playing to win that almost inevitably happens, and it's the thing I experienced trying to preserve my partner's legacy, which by the way, the answer to helping their legacy was to live and define my own. They would have never wanted me to give up my life and not spending time with my family in the name of, building up theirs. The reality was, after my wife said that to me, said I was an ordinary husband and father, within 6 days, I gave one of the divisions of our business to the existing employees and said, if you want it, it's yours. I'm going to start working from home. I'm not going to answer every email. Who just feels like life got really good with email? Like, oh my God, I just want more email. Because then, like in school, I would feel more popular with more email. No, so I decided not to answer every email. I decided not to pick up every phone call. I decided to spend some time with my family. And what happened was I was re-energized. Because in the playing to win methodology, I had this mindset that created diminishing marginal productivity. Diminishing marginal productivity is you're there more often, you're working harder, and you're getting less done. Just before we left for Thanksgiving, I remember my assistant walking up to me and saying, hey, you're double booked. What do you want to do? And I was like, double booked? Oh my God, what are we going to do? Oh, double booked. I was so exhausted, I couldn't even think what to do to double book. Now, right now, I could say, well, let's find out if someone's running late. Is there someone else in the firm that can handle? We could call and reschedule. I could think of 1,000 things because I'm not so damn exhausted right now, right? So playing to win is a dangerous dogma because here's the deal. The people that we see playing to win, like what's been going on with Elon Musk lately? Not sleeping, right? Absolutely, does it sound like quality of life? Does it sound like, but yet we put these guys as our icons, and a lot of times they have a massive destruction along their wake of people that they care about and things that start to destroy their life. So the good news is I have a third. I'm not just going to go, okay, there we go. Defense, boom. No, I have a solution. And the more you laugh, the more it encourages me to say these types of things, just so you know. The third category is to win, then play. What do I mean by win, then play? Well, let's dissect 4 or 5 win, then play examples and then give you a practical framework to do it in your life. Here's one example. France gave the United States the Statue of Liberty. Really nice of them to do that. It's pretty cool. The problem is they didn't give them a visitor center, or they didn't erected into the water like we just had this big statue. So who's going to pay for that? We did something brilliant in New York at that time. In the magazines and in all the newspapers and all the stuff they had back then, they said, hey, anyone that donates 6 cents, you can be the first to come to the visitor center because you're going to be the people that actually build the concrete, with your money, the concrete for this to be erected on and for the visitor center to exist. And so they had all of the money. And by the way, all the people ready to come and see the Statue of Liberty. I have a buddy named Yannick Silver. If anyone know Yannick, Yannick, so if one person clap for Yannick, I'll have to let him know that he needs to write more books. But he was the first 100 people to put money in Virgin Galactic, right? So that he can go up into space. So all of a sudden, he's already put the money in, and then he's going to get a ride on it. But they've actually got the money from people who are participating, not from disconnected investors, not from venture capitalists that only care about the return. And if you don't get the return, it doesn't matter the impact. They might squash your business. Win then play is you don't have to spend a single penny. You can build the momentum. So we can look at the Super Bowl. We don't even know who's going to be in the Super Bowl, but guess what? The NFL already won. They've already sold all the tickets. They've already sold all the experiences. They've already, got paid by Atlanta. They've already got all this money before the game's even played. Win then play is really cool, by the way. I get a little excited about it because it revolutionized my life. When I wrote Killing Sacred Cows, I decided, well, I don't know if enough people will buy the book. I had 6,600 people in my database at the time. I made this naive kind of notion that I want to be a New York Times bestseller, not knowing what that meant. And so what I decided to do is while I was writing the book, I started to pre-sell the book. And I pre-sold 22,000 copies by giving people these old things called DVDs. Yeah, I once tried to give a DVD at an event a few years ago, and a millennial was like, what is that? And they also didn't have a DVD player, so the next day I brought one of mine that we no longer use, and I could relate to them now, right? But I created a DVD, I created a teleseminar course, and all of a sudden I was giving them all this value up front, so 22,000 copies were pre-sold before the book even came out. Win, then play, right? And by the way, ask is so beautiful for it, because another thing that I did is I wanted to do a video series back in 2008, but I didn't have a TV studio yet. And I didn't know if people wanted a video series. I just knew I wanted to film one. And sometimes that would really suck if you just filmed one and you're the only one that wants it. So I just went out to everyone on my list and I said, hey, if I were to do a video series, A, would you be interested? And B, if I were to give it to you for half the price of everyone else so that you can give me feedback as I'm building it, how would that look? How it looked was we got $150,000 up front, built a TV studio, had the whole crew, and I still walked away with $20,000 at the end of it. And I knew it was filming it for actual people, not just to sit on my hard drive at that time or whatever, right? Win, then play. But one of the things that Ryan was talking about on the defensive side that's huge win then play is I'm not here to tell you to wait 30 years, save a bunch of money, invest it in speculative things. I'm here to give you 4 main I's right now that will put money in your pocket immediately and save you 10 or 20 years. So the first I, and these are all going to be win then play for the rest of the time. I hope I'm done giving the bad news. I'll just give good news that helps you out. And if I give bad news, I'll make fun of it. Is that fair? Okay, so the first I, and I guess it could be a T if you're not from the United States, but it's the IRS or tax. 93% of the business owners that we've talked to since 2011, 93% are overpaying on their tax. They're unintentionally tipping the government. Now, I'm sure you're happy with what they're doing with the money. But maybe you could do something better. So I'll give you just a quick insight on the framework of that. The first piece is, these are the obvious pieces, and then I'm going to get to the less obvious pieces that really make a big difference. The first piece is you have to have a tax team. So that team consists of up to 4 people. Number 1 is someone that's just good with record keeping. It could be a bookkeeper, a controller, or a CFO, depending on the size of your organization. The second one is a tax strategist. A tax strategist may or may not be a CPA. Some CPAs are historians and they're just looking at the data and they're having you pay tax on previous data. I need someone that looks forward with you and starts to develop a strategy that can be implemented. Oh, thank you. And I'll give you some really cool ways to do that, by the way, so that you can practically implement that. The third piece is an attorney. That attorney may be a corporate attorney or it may be a tax attorney, but the attorney will likely save you more money than the tax strategist, and I'll get into that once again in a minute. The fourth person, does anyone own a brick and mortar building here? If you own a brick and mortar building, the fourth one is an option for you. It's an engineer, specifically a cost segregation engineer. Cost segregation allows you to accelerate the tax depreciation on the building so that you'll save a bunch more money, okay? So up to 4 people on the team. Now, you want to meet with this team at least quarterly. It might only be 20 minutes. The longest meeting I've ever had is an hour. And I found like some with a personality on that team so I can tease and joke with them. Like the first time I had the tax strategist on the meeting, I said, hey, you know the difference between an introverted CPA and an extroverted CPA? He's like, no, what? I'm like, well, when an introverted CPA talks to me, you know, they look at their shoes. When the extroverted CPA talks to me, they look at my shoes. Yeah. That's as good as the jokes get, folks. You know. So that's the team, but you meet with them quarterly, and this is what that conversation sounds like. That meeting, there's no one that's going to say what you do on the meeting is legal or illegal. So it's your job to think outside of the box and be an entrepreneur on that. You're going to ask a ton of questions like, hey, tell me the coolest strategy you've done for someone in the last while. Like since we spoke last, are there any new tax changes that impact me? Is 199A something that I need to be aware of? Are there additional deductions I could take? And then my favorite thing to do is just look at my life and ask questions that I know they would normally say, you can't write that off, and think of ways to write it off. So I go, hey, we rented a villa in Italy, and we're gonna go spend a couple months there. Can I write that off? And then they laugh, and I go, no, I'm serious. Like, let's talk about how we could write this trip off. Number one, you can actually do an annual corporate compliance meeting anywhere you want, and I think better in Italy. So we go there. Then I said, well, I'm going to go see where my family's from and get some footage there because I'm bringing my camera guy with me. And I'm actually going to do a one-day mastermind since I'll be out there for 60 days for our inner circle. So I just go through it. By the end of the call, we wrote off 55% of a trip simply because I brainstormed, and their job is to tell me legal or not legal, and I choose the legal path. But I have to ask the questions because they're not necessarily thinking that way, right? Now, the other secret to this is you want to go back 3 years in your returns and see if you missed anything because you can amend your returns. When my partners died and things were chaotic, I didn't meet with my accountants and tax team. I just tried to keep everything together. Well, 2 years later, when things settled down, I went back and looked. I had overpaid my tax $54,000, $40,000 federal, $14,000 or $15,000 on the state, and I was able to go back and amend and get that money back. Okay, so you want to get a different set of eyes, a different tax strategist every 3 years to go back. And this year, we did just that. We weren't able to go back, but we were able to create new tax strategy for next year. So it's really great because sometimes they just get used to you. You get used to them, and there's a really comfortable relationship. And someone else comes in trying to prove themselves, and they start asking and thinking a little bit differently, and it opens up the world. And I tell them, I'll pay your hourly fee for this call, but I'll double it if you find something. That's what I tell them. So that's the first leg of tax. There's 2 more legs that we're going to go through. The second one, because imagine if you get $20,000 of savings in tax. What we find is for every $250,000 that someone makes in revenue, they're overpaying their taxes on average $10,470. And that's not revenue, that's spendable cash in your pocket. Like that's money that you can take that doesn't have to go through the gauntlet of paying for employees or ads or, all that kind of stuff. So part 2, a lot of you will know pieces of this. I just want to take it a little bit deeper. It's deductions. So your tax strategist is primarily responsible for your tax deductions. Those tax deductions look like this. The corporate compliance that we just talked about would be one, but your question you ask is, how does this relate to my business? That's the number 1 question. The number 2 thing you do is you document. How does it relate to the business? And you document. Now let me give you a few things that most people miss when it comes to deductions. I love my kids, but they're expensive. The nice thing is I can pay them $12,000 a year on the new tax plan, and that's 100% tax-free for them and tax deductible for my business. Now, I have to actually have them do things, which sometimes, I gotta tell you, my kids are stupid genius. Do you know what stupid genius is? Like, I could be trying to type in a 17-digit Apple passcode. They could listen through the wall, and they're like, that's a capital G, no, lowercase. That's an ampersand. Well, that was, you almost got us, Dad. And then they could, like, go buy something without me knowing. But I could be like, hey, guys, can you sweep the porch? And they're like, what do you mean sweep the porch? I'm like, you hold the broom and you walk. And they'll be like, it drops as they walk. And I'm like, and by the end, I'm like sweeping the porch for them. And then they're like, good job, Dad. Stupid genius, right? Just stupid genius. Like the genius of the stuff they get us to do. So I can pay them up to $12,000. I still control that bank account, but that's 100% tax deductible to my business and 100% tax-free to them. Here's the easiest one. They're all models. We love them. We like, you know, I think they're so cute. So we just put them up on a website, $2,500 modeling fee. That's the union standard. That's the easy one. If you pay them $2,500 to mow your lawn, that isn't going to hold up, you know? I've had them come up on stage with me. I've had them hand out books. I've had them go through courses, like absolutely make them like justify what it is that I'm paying them. Another example would be, you know, you can have a home office and write off a ton of your utilities. And if an accountant tells you that you can't, I've read the law. You can. You absolutely can. And by the way, if your accountant tells you they're conservative, let me tell you what they're really saying. Antiquated. They're telling you you're missing tax deductions, and when you catch them, they're going to say, but I'm being conservative. I've been doing this since 1998. We've had someone owe a tiny bit of money in one audit, and someone else that was transitioning to us owe $5,500 in an audit since 1998. Those are our two bad stories. I don't do anything offshore. I don't do anything that's like in the gray area. I just maximize every single thing that's available for you, because the first 300 pages of the tax code are why you have to pay tax. The next 5,300 are all the ways to navigate the system tax-free. Granted, nobody wants to read those. I'm glad there's weirdos that do. And then I just disseminate that so that we can all understand it, right? So deductions, there's tons of deductions out there. We'll get into some more of those. And then let's talk about the third category, because this is the game changer category. So the first category is build the team, look back every 3 years, meet with them proactively. The tax strategist will be responsible for the tax deductions, and the attorney will be responsible for this other category, and this category is called reclassification. You don't even know what a miracle it is that I'm talking this slow. I usually get so fired up that everybody's like pissed off at me by the end of the session. So I just want to make sure that this really sinks in, giving full effort, my A game here. All right, so reclassification is 4 things. First thing, turning active income into passive income. Second thing, turning ordinary income, which is as high as 37.5%, into capital gains, which is as low as 20%. So all of a sudden, you're reclassifying your income to pay less tax. The third category, taxable income to tax-free income, which is a business owner, you have a really unique situation there, and people that are charitably inclined, you have a majorly unique situation there. And then the fourth one is where I sound super smart. Could we get someone with a British accent to say this word? Tax arbitrage, right? Tax arbitrage. It just thank you. Yeah, it just sounds twice as smart from someone with the British accent. So smug, but smart, you know? It's cool. So, no. So tax arbitrage, we'll go through that, because here's the 2 tax traps that most people fall victim to. Number 1, deferring tax. Okay, my great-grandfather left Italy. He lived in San Giovanni in Fiore, and in 1913, he left Italy because he literally couldn't put food on the table. That's where the mob was really born, was down in that area, and they were taking a bunch of his profits, and the government was taking his profits, so he left his pregnant wife to be able to go to America and start earning money. It took him 7 years to leave the tent that he lived in and buy a home and become, of all things, a coal miner and bring his family out. Now, ironically, 1913 was the same year that the U.S. created the Revenue Code, which was the IRS and taxing people. It was going to be this temporary thing, by the way. It hasn't felt too temporary. But what if you defer your taxes into a future where taxes go up? Now, I can't tell you they're going to go up. I'm just telling you, in the U.S. alone, there's $21 trillion of debt. And typically the government raises money by taxation, not by producing goods and services, right? So what if you defer taxes and A, you're more successful in the future? If anyone's told you you're gonna be in a lower tax bracket in the future, don't listen to that. Why would you wanna have less money in the future? Stop listening to everything Ryan's teaching you if you wanna be broke in the future and have a lower tax, right? You're gonna have more taxes in the future just because of inflation alone. You're gonna have more money, and it's gonna take more money to buy the same things that it takes to buy today, which means you're gonna get hit with more taxes. So unless you're gonna have more tax deductions, I mean, Mick Jagger just had a kid recently, so I guess he can write that off on his taxes, but most of us when we're at that age, we're not having more kids. That's a confusing lineage, by the way, because like the baby is a grandfather for someone that's, 40 years older. I can't wrap my mind around it, but so I think this song's true. He can't get no satisfaction. You know what I'm saying? Mainly because kids 0 to 4 are romance and sleep terrorists. Let's just face it, that's part of their nature. Love them, but yeah. Okay, so let's talk about these 4 pieces. Like deferring is a problem because you might be in a higher tax bracket, and spending just in the name of saving tax doesn't make sense either. Why would you ever want to spend $1 to save 37.5 cents? I tried it once. I mean, when I was early on in my life, I just got married. My wife had this little red Infiniti car that she loved. I'm like, babe, I got a great idea. We got this big tax bill coming. What we're gonna do is we're gonna buy an SUV. She's like, we don't have any kids we don't go to the mountains. You just work all the time. I was in the play to win methodology back then. I was like, yeah, but we're gonna get to write it off through this obscure thing called Section 179 because it's over 5,500 pounds and it's like an old farmer's rule that now we can write this off. And so we did. We bought a depreciating asset by writing it off that year and ended up spending $1 to save 37 cents. How genius was that? She didn't even want it. She was like, but isn't a car depreciated? I'm like, I'm the financial genius here. Just listen, okay? I've learned to listen. So don't just spend to save and don't just defer. Instead, use these 4 things. So how do we reclassify? The type of corporation you choose absolutely matters. If you're a single member LLC, you're probably overpaying on tax. Even having a 1% partner in there makes a difference. Choosing an S election makes a difference. An S election allows you to take a reasonable salary. Reasonable isn't what you're worth, it's what someone else would be paid, and take the rest in distributions, and distributions save you up to 15.3% of tax. I got a fan here that's completely agreeing with me. Sweet, you got some good people in the room. So yeah, the S election would allow you to do that, or an S corporation, right? Or if you have like a new product coming out that isn't gonna be massive or you wanna launch things, a C corporation has lower tax on the first $50,000. So choosing that type of thing and classifying your income. Here's another example of reclassification. You all have intellectual property. Are you collapsing all your intellectual property in your one main company? Because you can separate it out into a different company and get paid in licensee fees or royalty fees and have less tax on it. That would be another example of reclassification. Or this isn't my normal clientele, but I have a rapper who's a client, really famous, and I made him go through the same channels everyone else did, and he came to one of our workshops, and he was complaining about how rappers, a lot of times, they're paying for a lot of their own video production and a lot of the clothes that they buy. And I'm not sure if they wear the clothes in their videos out to everyday life, but he doesn't, okay? So he's like, yeah, my accountant says I can't write that off. And when you look in the code, it says uniforms, if they can be worn in everyday life, can't be written off. But I go, how is it that Hollywood's writing all this off? Because Hollywood's buying stuff all the time that people could wear out every day. Well, the bottom line for Hollywood is they have production companies. So as soon as he set up a production company, he can now write off all those things when he buys it through there. That's reclassification. So reclassification is a game changer. So how do we take ordinary income, which is taxed higher than capital gains? Well, by owning a business, just by doing that, the equity you build in your business, if you ever sell a part or all of that, that's capital gains. That's going to lower your taxes. Let's say you're facing a ton of risk. You can set up your own insurance company, put money in pre-tax for that company, and then if you don't have the insurance claim, you get to take that out as a capital gain. So I just want you to wrap your head around the possibilities. Candidly, I'm going to make sure you have tons of resources because I want you to make sure that you're not wasting money, that you keep a lot more of what you make. But I'm planting the seeds right now so you know what's possible, right? The third category was taxable to tax-free. There's a couple ways to do this. Let's say that you want to sell your business, but you're afraid to just sell it to anyone because if you sell it out there in the world, they might not do it the same way you do it. They might not care about it the same way. We hear about this all the time. You can actually do what's called an ESOP, Employee Stock Option Program, where you could sell your business to your employees. The banks will even finance it for them on the purchase, and you don't pay tax on the stock that they buy, right? Or even better, let's say you have a charitable inclination and you have any highly appreciated asset like real estate or a business or a stock. You can donate it to what's called a charitable trust. Now, this blows my mind because usually when you sell your business, you pay tax and you have what's left over. If you decide to use a charitable trust, you donate it to a charitable trust of a charity that you love. Then when it sells, you pay no tax. But when you donated it, they gave you a proportionate tax deduction. So you got a deduction and no tax, and then you can take income out of that trust for up to 5% of money that's in there, up to 50% depending on the performance, because you're the first one to benefit. The charity only keeps what's left over when you die. So I'll let that sink in for a second. I think giving to charity might be cooler than giving it to the IRS. So the last one is tax arbitrage. I'll just share one tax arbitrage strategy because they're a little bit more complicated, and I want you to be very careful if anyone ever tells you about them, because there are some that are legit and a lot that are not. Okay, so I got a little caveat there. Solar credits would be an example. Other examples could be film credits. Other examples could be easements. Like if you owned a property that had a bunch of land on it and you want to pass that on for generations to come, you can do what's called a conservation easement, where you say, we're never going to develop that property, we're going to preserve that land, and you get a major tax credit for that. Or let's say that you buy a historical building, and you say, we're never going to tear it down, we love this historical building. You can donate the historical facade as an easement and get major tax deductions. I know we're getting in the weeds here a little bit, but you know who determines what that is the Forest Service, of all things. Forest Service goes, yeah, we like that historical easement. Let's give you this tax deduction. So like those are tax arbitrage. I'll just give you the simplest one that I've ever done. I bought a building years ago, and my attorney came through the building, and as he walked through, he goes, man, a lot of white walls here. Are you going to do anything? Put any pictures up on the walls? I'm like, can we just enjoy that I just finished the building? And he's like, no, I actually said it for a reason. You can actually buy artwork, and after you've owned the artwork for 3 years, you can donate it for the full appraised value, but you could buy it at a discount if you agree to never sell it on the open market. And I was like, tell me more. So he got me to one of these artists that I said, I'm going to buy a collection from you at a major discount, 25 cents on the dollar, because these are things that's hard for them to sell individually. I then demonstrate it in the building for 3 years, and then I donate it to museums after 3 years, and I get $2 back for every dollar I spent. That's tax arbitrage. Thank you. So look, this is win then play. This is putting more cash in your pocket today. That's just the IRS piece. That's just tax. And there's people from different countries here. Still use the framework. Build the team, see what deductions you can have, and find out what attorneys can help you structure it properly. I had people from Canada that heard me speak. They saved $100,000. It was their team that did it. They just used the framework, right? I've had people in the UK say, oh, this works, but that doesn't. I know, it's different for everyone, but the framework works. It simplifies a complex, usually boring topic. Some people love it. Most people don't. So I grew my hair long so you can enjoy it more. It's just for you. It's for you. Okay, there's 3 more I's I'm just going to briefly cover. One is interest. If you have more than one loan, the likelihood of you overpaying interest on that loan is 80%. All loans are negotiable, so make sure you've structured them properly. There's 4 C's that will help you structure these loans properly. Remember, there's 4 I's that help you win then play of keeping more of what you make. The first is the IRS. The second one is interest that we're talking about. And now I'm talking about 4 C's because I like alliteration and I'm trying to make it really sticky and memorable. The first C is your credit score. Get a credit score in the US of over 780, you have the world at your hands. The second C is collateral. If you have a paid off car, that paid off car could be refinanced to pay off credit cards or higher interest rate loans because it's got collateral attached to it. So credit, the second thing would be collateral. The third C is credit reporting, like cash flow reporting. What does your cash flow statements look like? We had someone that was donating $200,000 to their church, and they were actually putting it as an education expense. And I was like, well, guess what? That just lowers everything for you to go get a loan. If we classify it as a charitable donation, it doesn't count against the loan. And they went from a 6.5% interest rate on buying a building to a 4.17% interest rate with that one small change. You've got to look good to the bank, right? The next one is connections. Just the right connections. There's certain lenders that are really good with certain things and not good with other things. So if you have a credit card, just try this when you go home. Just call them and say you're looking to cancel or balance transfer or want to know what the deals are. They're going to move you to the retention department, and the retention department only thinks about one thing. You're leaving because you can't afford it and someone else gave you a better deal. And they will almost always, within moments, lower your interest rate. One phone call. We've had people do this. To my surprise, I actually had this guy, Kevin, from Arlington, Washington, call to see if he could renegotiate his second mortgage rate. And this was at a time when Seattle had really gone down in value massively with their real estate market. And when he talked to them, they actually just told him, they go, if you'll give us 10 cents on the dollar, we'll just consider it good. Now, that doesn't happen all the time. But what does happen a lot of the time is if you have equity, you've been paying on time, you have a good credit score, you could do a streamline refinance on your major things. A streamline means you stay with the same institution. You don't have to do all the documentation. You don't have to pay all the different fees. Look, I just want you guys to watch. She just gave me a nod the whole time, and she's in the financial world saying, yes, yes, yes. So Ryan's giving me the nod, you give me the nod. I'm feeling really good today. Feeling really good. It's a good day. So streamline refinance, we had this guy, Jason, out of Nevada. He actually wasn't going to call to negotiate or say anything. I made a bet with him. He called, he lowered his mortgage payment $751, and he stayed with the same bank because they know you have options when you've got your 4 C's aligned, okay? Now, the average improvement when people have cash flow optimization, which is a deeper conversation here, is $2,484 per $250,000 of revenue per month that shows up into their life. This is just win and play, keeping a lot more money by getting a little bit of financial savvy. The third I is investment. We won't spend a lot of time on investment. I want to have a quick, important paradigm shift around it. The next time you hear about percentages in investments, I want you to calculate the impact of the percentages. So let's say somehow through a major miracle, you could get 10% a year every year for 30 years. It never happens that way, but people present it that way a lot of times. So if you have 100 grand, you wait for 30 years, because didn't Einstein say that compound interest is a miracle or the 8th wonder of the world? Anyone ever heard that? That's a lie. I decided to do the research. He was in Austria, and at this conference, he said compounding numbers was the 8th wonder of the world. Security National Life said compounding interest. Tomato, tomato, like let's just misquote. But compound interest is a miracle that we think that it's going to save us, because 30 years from now, we have no clue what's going on. And when people tell you it takes money to make money, it takes your money for them to make money, right? So 100 grand earning 10% for 30 years grows to 1.74 million. Sounds awesome. But what if you had legal fees, admin fees, 12B1 fees, all these different fees that were non-performing, not paying for the manager, not paying for the analyst, just paying for like things that you could actually eliminate if you have the right institution? That 9.2% means 100 grand only grows to 1.4 million. That's $340,000 confiscated from your life. And I want to put it back in your pocket, by the way, not just, it didn't actually leave yet, right? We want to find those things. So the other thing is the stock market is so highly valued right now at a place that we've never seen in any time in history. And we're at the second longest run in history since we've seen a recession. So make sure you have downside protection. Learn about something called a trailing stop loss. A trailing stop loss, because then you can make sure that you don't participate on the full downside and you're not sitting there exposed. Fourth I. First I was what? IRS. Second I? Third I? And then the fourth I is our favorite topic of all time, insurance. How excited. Now, by the way, I've never found anyone that hates insurance. I just find people that hate paying for insurance. So And I just wish we could buy insurance like after something happened, right? Like I get in a car wreck, I buy the right amount of insurance. You know, that would be ideal. But insurance is one of the, I don't know, here's what's messed up about it. Like I'm letting you know a secret, you already know it, but you can only get insurance if you don't need it. That's the only time you can get it. If you need it, you're like, I got the AIDS, I really need it. They're like, sorry, you're dying, right? Like you can only get insurance when you don't need it. So let's make sure you don't have duplicate coverages or improper structure. And this is worth writing down because it took me like 20 years to figure out. Only insure the catastrophic, never the inconsequential. Inconsequential means you can sleep at night not having coverage on that, and the next day if it happens, you can write a check and you didn't lose any sleep. There was no infringement upon your peace of mind. That usually means low deductibles aren't the most efficient thing to do. Short-term disability policies versus long-term. Short-term you can get rid of if you have enough liquidity. Like there's all these things that can save you a whole boatload of money. Investigate umbrella policies. You can get a bunch of coverage with an umbrella and lower the price on your other policies. And you'll actually end up like the best one that I ever did, we got someone $9 million more of liability coverage and saved him $250 a year. Now, $250 isn't a lot of money, but $9 million of coverage is a game changer, and they stayed with the same company. It wasn't like who had the cutest commercial, you know, because like these insurance companies are beating the beer commercials these days. Like they've got relatively funny, cutesy commercials, you know. Is it the Geico, the Gecko? I don't even know what the hell they are. Is it the Caveman? But the bottom line is they're making a boatload of money because of improper structure. So look at your deductibles, get rid of anything inconsequential, only insure the catastrophic, because the catastrophic is what harms your legacy. All right, so that's the 4 I's. Got them? We good? Save some tax for anyone yet? Like, we got some tax ideas you can implement, whether it's paying your kids, having the right corporate structure. And by the way, if you're unincorporated, you're overpaying tax and you have a 400% higher chance of being audited. So incorporate. And if your accountant told you not to incorporate, they're not an attorney. The attorneys help you incorporate, the accountants help you with your deductions. The attorneys help you reclassify income, the accountants either file taxes or they are tax strategists that help you with your deductions, okay? We doing all right? Cool. All right. I'm gonna make a bold statement. If you think you have a money problem, it's never actually a money problem. First way to prove that is if you can write a check and it goes away, not a problem, right? Anyone in here want more financial capital, by the way? Show of hands. If you don't raise your hand, you have to stop listening right now because I'm about to show the magic formula here. Like, I remember when I really got clear about this, I was doing a radio show and I brought on this guest. His name's Rich Christensen. He had written a book called Bootstrap Business, Zigzag Principle, Toes Turn Purple. Brilliant guy. But I want to be entertaining on radio. And he's in person, in studio. And he said that he had started a business when he wrote Bootstrap Business for less than $5,000. They were documenting it in the book and they were going to sell it for multiple millions. And they just sold it for multiple millions. And he proved out the concepts of the book. And he said, with nothing but $5,000. And on air, I said, you're a liar, which... he's a Mormon. He doesn't like being called a liar, you know? So he gets really red in the face. He's super pissed. And for dramatic, I just stay with the pause. And I'm like, and when I thought he might punch me, I finally go, well, let's go through this really quick. Who was your first client? And he said, what do you mean? I'm like, well, just tell me who your first client was. This is a brand new startup business. He goes, Sean Combs. I'm like, oh, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, like rapper Sean Combs? He's like, yeah. I'm like, a startup business, got his business. He goes, well, I had this business before that I was doing. I'm like, oh, so maybe I have a point here. See, where most wealth is unrecognized, unutilized, and where you store the most equity in the world is something called relationship capital. Relationship capital are people, networks, organizations, subscribers, clients, family, friends. Like, relationship capital is absolutely key. It's the main key to wealth, yet most people that are contributors like you are really good at contributing, not so good at receiving. Like if I went through before you knew who I was and I asked you, hey, what can I do to support your business? Most people would say, I'm good. Because we're just busy, right? We don't think about these kind of things. But think about when you support or help someone, do you feel more or less bonded to them? More or less connected to them? So you have so much that's available to you just in relationship capital. And Ryan says it's not about the resources you have, it's about being resourceful. This is the resourceful equation. This is the impact equation and the value equation, because in the world of cause and effect, value creation is at the cause and dollars are the effect. More simply said, dollars follow value. So we're going to test this equation as I unveil it. We're going to give you a sheet right now. It's called the cash flow starter kit. We're going to see how to put this into action, right? Now, the other part of this equation is mental capital. Have you ever heard it's not what you know, but who you know? That's a lie, because if you know nothing, no one wants to hang out with you. And I was like, oh, you bring nothing to the table, please show up. Let us teach you everything while you bring nothing back, right? So mental capital is our ideas, innovation, insights, human ingenuity. It's all these kind of like, it's our strategies, it's our concepts. And see, the bridge between mental and relationship capital is what I would say is business. The game of business is how do you deliver your mental capital to people through solving problems, serving others, and delivering that value. And as a byproduct of that, you make money. So it doesn't take money to make money, it takes value creation to make money. So this is the problem in the world of finance. No matter how hard you work, no matter how great your relationships are, if you don't have the right financial insight, the right financial team, the right financial structure, that could all go away to taxes, to interest, to mistakes. Anyone else in here other than me made a financial mistake before? Like I got really good early on in my career thinking I was Midas. Someone told me I was financial Einstein, and the problem was I believed it. So my very first real estate deal that I had nothing to do with the deal, I just had 25 grand that I gave my brother-in-law. And he gave me back in 3 months 50 grand. If you annualize that, that's a 400% return. Then the second deal my buddy Joel brought me, we put no money down on the deal. We bought it because his friend was going to lose the home and had just got a new job. And then I helped him repair his credit. And after 2 years, we sold it back to him. And I walked away with 90 grand. I might as well be the kid that goes to Vegas and wins the first game of poker. And now I'm going to be a professional, right? See, because we all have something called investor DNA. Your investor DNA is your core values, your core competencies, it's your core drivers, and you focus instead of diversify. You focus on things you know because it's how do you become the best investor? There's no such thing as a great investment, there's great investors. And if you get into something that makes money and you don't know how or why, it's dangerous. It's seductive. So it's actually the best investors, according to Warren Buffett, are the people that say no a lot more often. Because they say no to everything unless it perfectly aligns with their knowledge and their investor DNA, because there's risky investors, not risky investments, right? So the more mental capital you have, see, I was leveraging financial capital. I was borrowing money from a bank to buy real estate, and then all of a sudden when the real estate went down, I'm still stuck with the real estate, but I have a bill. The best thing to leverage is mental and relationship capital. Like if you could just save the tax because you have the insight, or you have the team that does this, like think about what that does to your financial capital. We all know in business, we've heard it over and over again. How important is it having an A team in business? I mean, IBM said it was a 5,200% difference when you hire an A teamer versus anything less in production. Or Steve Jobs said it was a 99-to-1 advantage if he hired an A teamer. He said, if I went and bought, and this is so old because it's from the Titans of Technology recorded in the 90s, and it was then re-put out on the lost tapes of Netflix, is what the series was called. But they showed the whole interview, and he said, hey, if I bought the best CD player versus the second best, it's hardly something you can tell the difference. He said, but if I got the very best employee versus someone that was second best, he goes, it was my strategic advantage in building wealth because I got a 99-to-1 return. So we know that in business, but what about our finances? If we're so busy working and playing offense, if we don't have the defense that says, how do we keep more of what we make? Then you get stuck in the playing to win, which is highly risky. I'm yelling again. There I am, you know? So I want to have a bit of an experiment with this equation. Does this make sense? Mental capital times relationship capital equals our financial capital. So I'll write it more clearly. Mental capital times relationship capital equals financial capital. Which means if you have a money problem, that's the symptom of a mental or relationship capital issue. It's just a symptom. Either you have the wrong knowledge, misinformation, myths, missteps, or you're spending time with a-holes. I have a really easy strategy with relationships. 3 categories. Friends, I invite them into my life. I say yes to their invitations. I do business with them. Friendly, I say no to every invitation in the most polite way. I share nothing important in my life with them, and I never invite them to anything. And then buddies, I love hanging out with them, but I'm sure not doing business with them, right? So just having that avoids a lot of drama and conflict, and it reserves the time for the things that help me most in life, because I'm really considering, how do I add value to people's lives? How do I make deposits into relationship capital with people that want to make deposits back? If you've read the book Give and Take, it's so phenomenal on that concept. It says there's givers and takers in the world. Guess who's at the bottom? The givers. Guess who's at the top? The givers. The takers are in the middle. There's a difference between givers that truly succeed and givers that get taken advantage of. And when you have that key distinction of what it takes to build relationship capital, it has reciprocity, and you're spending time with the right individuals. So if you have an accountant that tells you they're conservative, they don't meet with you proactively, and they just tell you, a big bill, that is a taker relationship. You're paying them and not getting the value in return, and it's destroying your financial capital. It's the wrong relationship capital. If you have a notion in your head that it's all about budgeting and scrimping and sacrificing and delaying and deferring and eliminating, you have the wrong mindset in order to have true wealth. Just like I did when my partners died, right? So does this all make sense? This is how I think. This is how I see the world. So mental capital times relationship capital equals financial capital.
Want to continue the path to be a better investor? Make sure that you're not losing money and taking too much risk? Well, click here and learn about strengths vesting.